Let them learn French. Canada's bilingual elite hold all the power. According to the 2011 census, only 17% of Canadians claim fluency in both official languages. That number is mostly inflated when one includes all of Canada, since most of that 17% live in the province of Quebec, where they have been using laws like Bill 22, Bill 178, and 101 to socially engineer a French-only nation for many decades now. Viewing the world outside the province of Quebec, we see that knowledge of French is a price of admission to the upper echelons of the Canadian elite. To be Prime Minister of Canada, you have to know French. To be Governor General of Canada, you have to know French. To be Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, you have to know French. And the debate rages about the other 8. The Canadian Armed Forces, the CRTC, or the CBC, you have to know French. In 2012, Parliament voted unanimously in favour of making it mandatory for the Auditor General, the Chief Electoral Officer, and a number of commissioners, including those for Privy, Information and Ethics, to know French. Above a certain rank, most federal bureaucrats, regardless of what province they work in, invariably hit a promotional glass ceiling unless they know French. This is an awful lot of power to concentrate in just 17% of the population, don't you think? If you heard of some third world dump where a linguistic minority of less than 20% held a permanent, legally protected monopoly on all of the country's top jobs, you'd probably think it wasn't much of a democracy. And you'd be right. Discriminatory, arbitrary barriers to full civic participation remain a blight no matter where they're practiced, and we undermine any pretense of being a truly egalitarian nation when we seek to normalize or rationalize them. Yet, a lot of Canadians seem distressingly eager to do so. Premier Brad Wall of Saskatchewan recently laughed off the idea that he had prime ministerial ambitions by quipping, "I struggle with one official language." As if the lack of fluency in a tongue that only 0.5% of his constituents speak at home was a perfectly rational reason for excluding Canada's most popular and competent provincial politician from higher office. Boy, have we been conned and programmed. Justin Trudeau once quipped that non-bilinguals are simply lazy. A Marie Antoinette-like bit of victim-blaming, let them learn French, popular with segments of the Canadian elite who simply can't fathom why more peasants can't find the time to study an exotic dying language utterly irrelevant to their daily lives. A situation which only erroneously finds an inkling of justification within the phrase "they are shooting themselves in the foot" by sheer virtue of the fact that the majority English have bought into this fantasy and are allowing it to happen. And frankly speaking, many like myself already know French but feel anger and resentment by the way such a small percentage of people, the French, are forcing the majority to do it their way, while at the very same moment that small percentage of people, the French, are outlawing or minimizing the English language wherever they gain the upper hand.
Any new sign in Dieppe must be bilingual, with French being first.
Since the party's 2011 Francofication, the NDP has never missed an opportunity to clamor that ever larger segments of the federal jobs should be exclusively reserved for bilinguals, while the Prime Minister has honed a habit of ostentatiously opening with French in absolutely every speech he delivers, even when speaking to the White House press corps or the Israeli Knesset.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Right Honourable Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of Canada, will join me in these chairs and make a few opening remarks. I believe that he will open in French, but he promises that he will translate his French remarks as he just did in the White House.
Je suis ici pour le sommet des chefs nord-américains.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. L'amitié entre le Canada et Israël prend ses racines dans l'histoire,
takes its roots
se
in
nourrit
history,
de valeurs communes
and it is
et
nourished
se
by a
renforce
common goal
volontairement au
and
plus haut niveau.
strengthened.
Journalists and academics have long played a role in this unilingual shaming as well, posting long, untranslated French quotations in books or articles, excessively praising the merits of being fluently bilingual when evaluating the suitability of a potential leaders, and of course, drifting in and out of French in supposedly public forums before overwhelmingly unilingual English audiences, including social media. Consciously or not, this sort of thing helps foster class anxiety and self-loathing in the 83% of the Canadians who were unfortunate enough not to grow up in urban Montreal households or spend a couple of semesters in Paris, and normalizes the idea, as Jean Chrétien once said of himself, that bilinguals are simply better Canadians who deserve to be in charge of everything.
Est-ce que le Canada est mieux servi quand il y a plus de Québécois au pouvoir que quand il y a plus d'Albertains au pouvoir?
Ben, je suis libéral, alors c'est sûr que je pense que oui.
It's even worse when such smugness is accompanied by condescending untruths about just how easy it is to learn second languages later in life, or how welcoming Canada's existing bilingual elite is towards those who try. There is a case to be made in favor of institutionalized bilingualism. 60% of Quebec's residents claim to speak French exclusively, and Ottawa has an obligation to not make their relationship with the state unduly difficult. But Canada's cult of bilingualism has clearly mutated well beyond that humble utilitarian goal into something far more destructive and disturbing.
Study after study, going back to Egan Chambers' landmark report on minority representation in the Quebec Civil Service, have concluded that there is systemic discrimination against minorities in the Quebec Civil Service. It's not a personal opinion, this is in Quebec government reports.
Giving rise to the kind of permanently stratified society in which a bilingual ruling class inhabit a privileged bubble that insulates them from appreciating the rareness of the peculiar talent they possess, or empathizing with those who lack it. People can speak and tweet in whatever language they want, but Canada's second-class 83% majority have equal right to recoil from the overzealous, ostracizing culture of bilingualism, which is not, nor has ever been, rational given the demographic realities of this overwhelmingly English country. The self-serving Franco-centric affections of our betters are particularly worth noting amid all the furious denunciations of the separatist threat filling the nation's editorial pages lately in anticipation of Premier Marois' supposedly looming re-election. After all, should Quebec finally leave, Canada's bilingual elite would suddenly be robbed of the primary justification for their existence. You can forgive them if they seem a bit testy.